And today in Washington, Florida Senator Marco Rubio and Governor Romney both speaking at the Latino Coalition Economic Summit. Now, we caught up with Senator Rubio at the event. Senator, nice to see you, sir.
Nice to see you.
You had a very receptive audience. People were very interested in hearing what you had to say.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I mean, as I said in there, I think all Americans value our heritage as a nation of opportunity, but I don't know of any community that values it more than Americans of Hispanic descent, who are literally a generation removed, most of them, from a very different life.
Are you an optimist?
I am. I think America's future will be better than its past. I believe we're going to get our problems solved. I just think the sooner we solve them, the better we're all going to be.
Well, you say the sooner we solve them. One of the things that you said in the speech is that, and correct me if I misquote you, is that you don't have the sense, you don't see the sense of urgency in Washington. That that you have an idea that things should move much faster.
Well, and that's my point. I mean, there isn't a sense of urgency now, and I think we're going to solve these problems because Americans always get it right in the end. But the longer we wait to solve them, the harder it's going to be to solve, and the less options we're going to have to solve them, and the options we do have are going to be more painful. So the sooner we can start dealing with these issues, the better. The truth is we haven't solved any major issues in this country in a long time.
Why? I mean, you're new to the U.S. Senate. You said you're frustrated. Are you frustrated?
I am. I think part of it is that lack of urgency. I think part of it is that we're now in perpetual campaign. And the Senate's a perfect example. The United States Senate, every vote on the floor is predetermined. They know if it's going to fail or pass. They're literally just bringing them up to create material for campaign commercials in the fall, instead of solving or dealing directly with some of the major issues that we face as a country.
Do you get other senators saying the same thing? Is there sort of a malaise over the Senate, or some of the younger ones sort of like, let's get things rolling, let's move?
Well, I'll tell you, yesterday a group of us, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, came together and filed something called the Startup 2.0 Act, which is basically a collection of ideas that we have gotten from startup business types of what they're looking for, what they would need to see changes in our law in order to create new jobs and new businesses. It's a collection of ideas everybody agrees on, and we put it together in a bill and we filed it yesterday. There's no reason why that thing shouldn't pass. So that's the kind of thing that we're trying to do. See if we could stir some sort of action, at least on the things we agree on.
I asked you earlier if you're an optimist, and listening to your speech, you talked about the mother who puts her child on the bus, and thinking that the child's going to have, can have all the things that she wasn't able to have.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, every single morning, all across this country, parents, single mothers, married couples, whatever, send their children to school in the hopes that those kids are going to have a chance to do everything they never had a chance to do, with the sincere hope that everything that went wrong in their lives will go right for their children. And I think whether they're successful or not will determine what kind of country we're going to have in this new century.
Now, you have a particularly receptive audience, obviously, because they're very thrilled to have you here. The Latinos are here. You're a particular favorite of theirs, understandably so. But this is also the Chamber of Commerce. These are the business people. When it comes time for election, that Hispanic vote, that may determine the election. It's a huge vote. Right now, President Obama is leading Governor Romney with the Hispanic vote. Why?
Well, I don't know why. A lot of it is historic. Some of it is people have been registered Democrat for a long time, and that's how they vote. Some is people still have hope that the president will become once again what he said he was back in 2008 before he became, a guy that was constantly dividing the American people against each other. But at the end of the day, I think of Americans of Hispanic descent, as much as any community in this country desperately wants to be able to start up their own businesses, desperately want to be able to be their own boss, or desperately want their kids to be able to go to college, graduate, and find a job. And the truth is that the president and his policies are making it harder for those things to happen. I think as the campaign goes on and more Americans begin to realize that, you're going to begin to see a change, especially in the Americans of Hispanic descent.
But why have the Democrats been more able to connect or get their message, their convincing message, apparently, to the Hispanic community than the Republicans? I mean, the numbers actually, if you look at the poll numbers now, between 2008 and now, it's up about 6%, 6 points, give or take, in the polls favoring the Democrats more than it was in 2008. So what's happened?
Well, I think a couple things. First of all, it wasn't that long ago that George W. Bush did very well among Hispanic Americans, and I think we can get to that point again. Obviously, the president's run a very targeted campaign to these communities. I think the other issue is some of it in certain states is historic. I mean, people have been Democrats for 20 years. That's what they are, and that's what they vote in their communities. So the party affiliation comes to bear. So I don't think this is a one-election commitment by Republicans. I think as a Republican Party, we need to be the party of the free enterprise system, and I think we have a very compelling argument to make, and that argument is that the free enterprise system, the American free enterprise system, is the only economic system in the world where you're going to be able to leave your children with a chance at a better life than the one you've had. And we've got to make that argument consistently and over a prolonged period of time, not just one election cycle.
Historically, the Republican Party has done very well with the Cuban Americans in South Florida. The Hispanic population out west is a little different, had a little different interests, different concerns than the Cuban population. I'm curious, in light of Governor Romney saying that he is in favor of something called self-deportation, which many Hispanics in the western part of the United States, they're not wild about that.
Well, I think what the governor was responding to was this idea that somehow we could round up and deport 9 million people. And I think his answer was that that's not a realistic approach. I think the governor's been very clear. He's a supporter of a legal immigration system that works, and I touched upon that in there today. If we had a legal immigration system that works, and if we had a workable guest worker program that didn't threaten American jobs, a lot of the illegal immigration problem would begin to diminish rapidly. So I think that's what the Republican Party and what Governor Romney is about, and that is supporting reforms and modernizations to our legal immigration system that would not only make it easier for us to enforce the law, but quite frankly, would make it easier for people to be here legally.
Maybe you're not the right person to ask this, but President Obama about 3 years ago gave a speech about immigration up at American University, and it was a sort of a landmark speech on immigration. I went and listened to the speech. At the time, he had the House and he had the Senate, both Democrats. Now things have changed, but why wasn't he able to do something about immigration policy then? He had dreams or policies, he had things he wanted to do. Is there simply, it just isn't the will even within his own party?
Well, I think that's true. That's the first thing. But the second thing I would say about it is that I think there are some in the Democratic Party, not all, but I think there are some people in the Democratic Party that think the immigration issue is more valuable to them unsolved, that it gives them something to talk about, that they can go back to Hispanic communities and make unrealistic promises every 2 years and win votes. And I think for some, not all, but for some Democrats, the issue of immigration is better politically if they just leave it the way it is right now, because they can use it against Republicans.
You're probably one of Governor Romney's greatest voices to reach out to the Latino community. Do you plan to go to the western part of the United States and speak to the Hispanic community there? And how can you reach them? I mean, how can you get the vote for Governor Romney?
Well, Greta, I think I want to be as helpful as I can to Governor Romney's campaign, because I think it's so critical that we have a new occupant at the White House, that somebody new take the job in 6 months. I don't think that we're going to be able to solve the major issues that we face as a country if Barack Obama's reelected. So wherever they think I can be helpful, I'm willing to do it.
But I guess I'm thinking, so how do you get the message? Because that is such an entrenched vote. Just like, you might have, a particular demographic may favor another party.
Right.
This is one demographic that has really solidly and has increased for the Democratic Party. So and since it's such a significant voting bloc, it can't just be ignored by the Republican Party. They have to aggressively go after it.
Well, Greta, I would say to you that I'm not sure that the message that the Republican Party should have for Americans of Hispanic descent is any different than what it should have for the rest of America, and that is that the free enterprise system works, that it gives people the opportunity to rise above the circumstances of their birth, do better for themselves, and leave their children better off than themselves. I think that argument is particularly effective in the Hispanic community, because all of us are but a generation removed from those very hopes.
How did you get it to resonate? I mean, how do you get it to connect with the people? I mean,
I think
if they've just heard, I mean, suppose Governor Romney goes down there and just says all those things. How do you actually get it to connect so that they actually believe him?
Well, A, I think you need to say it, and then B, I think you need to explain how the policies work, as I tried to do today. I mean, my father was a bartender. He worked at hotels. Why did he have a job working at hotels? Because we had a big enough economy where people could afford to come down to Miami Beach and stay there for a weekend or for a week. And so our dreams are directly related to the size of our economy and the policies we pursue. And because my dad had a job as a bartender, I got to go to law school and now be here.
Do I get extra credit if I don't ask you the vice president question?
Yes,
you
do.
Remember that? Okay, so I won't ask it. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Greta.